We've been analysing the big stories across South Africa, and one of the big stories outside of the obvious ones like xenophobia and Eskom is the housing class action being taken against the big four banks in South Africa by the consumers who have had their houses repossessed over a period of time. There's some serious allegations about the repossessions, and there are statements that the houses are being sold at ridiculous rates like 10 Rand or 200 Rand, and they're being sold to employees within the banks themselves. So this has raised a lot of awareness. The story's just broken in the media, and we've started to see it enter the charts both in news media and in social media. And it prompted us to now do an analysis on not only the big four banks in the country, but the big banks in our country overall. And if you put all those banks onto one chart, their news press taken from print, radio, television, and online news media, the biggest bank is Absa, dominating that coverage by 26.21% over a period of 60 days. Nedbank comes in second at 24.55%. What is interesting is those two banks, Absa and Nedbank, account for over 50% of the banking news in our country. And we drilled down into that to see why they are so much bigger than the rest in the press. And it's largely attributed to sport. Sport sponsorship is massive for those two banks, and it accounts for a large deal of their press. And it goes to show that sport sponsorships can certainly boost news media across the traditional media platforms and the online news platforms in our country. So we had a look at where these banks were featuring and what type of sites they were dominating. And what is interesting is that we rank the sites by importance, or we rank the publications by prominence and also circulation, etc. And for radio and TV, we also give a ranking for the level of listenership or viewership. So looking at those statistics combined with what we found that Nedbank and Standard Bank dominate the biggest platforms in our country. The top sites and the top publications belong to those two banks. But when we start looking a little bit further down, so the rankings 2, 3, and 4, they are dominated primarily by Nedbank, source ranks 2 and 3. So the second and third largest sites and publications in our country belong to Nedbank. And then on level 4, we're looking at Absa taking a very large chunk of the pie. What is interesting, though, is that Standard Bank sort of catches up on source rank 3, so in the middle of the tier. And it just goes to show that pitching your story to the correct platform can increase the level of press you're receiving. We then drilled further down to understand the sentiment of what was being said about the banks, including the sport aspect. And for negative press in general, we found that Absa and Standard Bank are sort of neck and neck. Followed just marginally behind that is Nedbank, and then FNB at the bottom of the pile of the big four. When we look at neutral press, though, Absa and Nedbank dominate the neutral press category, followed by Standard Bank and then FNB, and marginally behind them is Bidvest. Positive press is largely dominated by Nedbank, and again, this is sport-related. They come in at almost a third more than any other bank on the positive press side. Absa follows them, and behind them is FNB, so FNB also up in their positive press game, and Standard Bank coming in slightly after that. So with all those statistics in mind, there's two things we can learn from that. The first thing is sponsorships definitely do work if you're looking at PR strategy. And secondly, quality of media and sentiment of media largely attribute to the level of press you're receiving across the mainstream platforms.